Hello and welcome to The Clear Voice, brought to you by Clear Career Professionals. I'm your host, James Grin. With us as usual is Michael Bays, the president of Clear Career Professionals. Michael, welcome to the show and thanks for being with us.
Absolutely, James. It's a great day here in Texas. As we're getting closer to the end of 2025, it's an interesting time to kind of look back and look at all the accomplishments through the year. And I think our conversation coming here is going to be really informative to our listeners, and it should be something that's of really good value for them.
Definitely. One of the things before we get into our topic, I just want to say congratulations. Clear just hit their third anniversary, so 3 years old just a couple of days ago before the recording of this. So congratulations on that. It's a big milestone.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been quite a journey, and we've grown from a company that there was kind of four founding members, and we've grown to about 22 folks throughout the country, and just having significant impact on a number of communities in many different ways. So happy to be able to be out in the field and still really help those organizations achieve more.
Yeah, it's great to be on the journey with all of you guys. It's really, I get more out of it than anything else on the learning side, just being around some of the great people that I get to talk to. So I appreciate it. Well, we've talked in the past about physical wellness and mental health wellness, which are both very important topics. And today we're going to talk about financial wellness, which, Mike, I'm sure you can connect the dots between especially mental wellness and financial wellness, looking at some of these stats. And 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck in our country. The average credit card balance is around $10,500, and student loan debt per borrower varies widely, but some of the reported numbers are $39,000 per borrower. That's a lot of debt to be carrying around. And the one that worries me the most, and I don't know if this catches your eye as well, 64% of Americans do not have enough savings to cover routine emergencies of $1,000. So a set of tires or even a small medical bill in the emergency room could wipe out their savings.
Yeah, those stats are pretty interesting. When I look at those, I think there's a lot of work to do as far as the financial health and wellness of the country, which you're absolutely right. That definitely impacts a person's mental and physical wellness. Especially as you go to the grocery store, what I've noticed is you'll go in, and if you're trying to shop somewhat healthy, you'll get two or three bags of food, and you're upwards of $300, and you're kind of thinking, man, did I buy something of gold in here or whatever? But it's really difficult to focus on the overall wellness of yourself, and then particularly of people with families and children that are out, and it's just so many costs are impacting them. I always try to not have a very fatalistic attitude. There's a lot of people in the government industry and probably worldwide that just throw our hands up and say, hey, this is the way it is. But the more that we really look at these issues and have guests like our guest today talk about these things, I think the more we can impact and really come up with solutions and move forward in a very positive way.
Yeah. And as usual, when we're talking about some of these things, we did want to bring on somebody who's well versed in them and can provide some good information and maybe some practical tips that people can implement at work and in this case, personally as well. Our guest this week has made it his mission to help others in public service strengthen their financial wellness. Nick Daugherty is the president of FinancialCop, a firm built by and for those who serve our communities to help them better manage their personal finances. Prior to founding FinancialCop, Nick spent 14 years with the Grand Prairie Police Department, rising to the rank of sergeant. After paying off his own consumer debt, Nick realized how many officers and city employees face the same struggles. That experience led him to launch FinancialCop, which is a fiduciary planning and training firm dedicated to the unique financial challenges of first responders and municipal employees. Today, we'll talk about Nick's journey, the work of FinancialCop, recent changes in the Texas municipal retirement system, and why financial wellness is not just about money, it is about leadership. So Nick, welcome to the show, and we appreciate having you. Nick, I don't think the average person in the financial space came into it like you. Tell us a little bit about what drew you to policing and what serving in law enforcement appealed to you in those early days.
When it comes to finances, I didn't get my degree in financial planning. I actually got my degree in criminal justice because the Grand Prairie Police Department offered a $100 bachelor incentive per month if I did. So I get people ask me all the time, how did you become the nerd? I got a PhD in doing stupid stuff with money. I came into law enforcement as a rookie cop. I had over $80,000 in debt. $21,000 of that was tied up in one car stereo system, all on credit cards. destroyed the car and did what you're supposed to do, right? When you destroy a car, trade it in, take the hit on it and upgrade to an even bigger car and then do it again. And so I got to the point where if I didn't work 20 hours of overtime every week, I couldn't pay my bills. And that's really scary in first responder world, because it's not a matter of if, it's when you get injured, and you can't work overtime when you're on light duty. It's very fortunate. I had a beat partner of mine. He was a 20-year vet that went car to car and, for lack of better words, beat me upside the head and said, stop doing stupid. At the time, our shift was 3 to 11 in the evening, and Dave Ramsey came on at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So it was the first radio show when I first hit the streets, and I fell in love with his debt snowball, and I committed to my then fiance to pay off all $80,000 in debt. And 24 months later, 1,000 hours of overtime, we became debt free. And that was almost 19 years ago. I became the money nerd, and all my Cranberry cops started asking me about deferred comp and the pension. So I self-taught myself the financial world, because all the financial advisors I talked to me like I was dumb. And then fast forward to 2011, Steve Dye became our chief, and he said, hey, I want you to start teaching our department about financial wellness. And completely honored and humbled. This year, we're going to cross over 50,000 first responders we've taught from 4,000 agencies across the country. And so it's really honored to have had the chance to serve in law enforcement, but kind of unique in that I gave up my sergeant stripes to dedicate my life to helping my brothers and sisters with money.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. And 50,000, that's a lot of people that you're providing really good, impactful information to. You kind of talked about it just a little bit, but beyond the debt part of it and having to pay that off, how does that impact an employee when they're under that debt load and working these government jobs that don't always pay the most?
So let's face it, law enforcement's one of the top 5 most stressful careers in the country. And you throw money problems into the mix, and it's a recipe for disaster. I taught the chiefs in Texas, and the second time I taught them, we actually talked about the discipline aspects and how many discipline issues in a department can we tie to money? How many injuries can we tie to money because we just got done working 3 16-hour days in a row and our head isn't in the game, and so we got hurt because of a mental mistake? Let's talk about the sad side of this. We lose more of our brothers and sisters in this country to suicide than we ever will in the line of duty. Top 2 reasons for suicide in America: relationships that we suck at and money. And so it's a crucial impact to everything we do, right? You think about the morale in a department. We all have grumpies on our shifts that bring the entire morale of an entire shift down. And 90% of the time, grumpy is grumpy because he just can't afford to retire.
I just wanted to chime in here real quick. I really enjoy what Nick is talking about. But Nick, I also wanted to throw something in there from a leadership standpoint. You had mentioned working with those leaders. How much do you think the leaders are open to, say, an officer coming in and being open and honest about a real financial struggle? So, do we provide the opportunity to come in and go, hey, I'm in trouble here?
Yeah, we're doing a lot better than we were a decade ago when I started this. Financial wellness is starting to become more of a common term across the country. It's been commonplace in Texas, right? Texas, let's face it, I'm not trying to toot my horn here, but we basically created the entire financial wellness platform in the state of Texas. And we were the first state in the country to prioritize this. We're doing better in Texas, but the reality is we still, whether it's financial, whether it's mental, nutrition, we still have a lot of leadership out there that are going in there and checking boxes instead of actually making things available and resources. We've got to do a better job of not checking boxes, making sure the resources are there. And I'm going to get another soapbox, and not forgetting to include our spouses in the mix too, because they're part of this team.
Yeah, I would say that finances, in my time being a police officer, that's one of the most common calls is going out to the domestic. And one of the most common things that the domestic is about money. And now we're in a physical fight because somebody spent $100 on something on the credit card.
And I'll piggyback more on that. You talk about our leaders doing the right things. We are seeing, again, the movement of it, but the reality is it starts at the academy level. And, we just basically made our entire virtual FinancialCop Academy free for all recruits in the state of Texas and Oklahoma. And we're expanding that out across the country. But at the same token, I blame our divorce rate in law enforcement on our recruits. About half of our recruits are married. And what are we doing to train that spouse to what we're about to do to that first responder? Because they're not married to the same person. And the bigger issue now, especially in this recruitment and retention crisis we're having, is we've created these bidding wars amongst agencies. Grand Prairie Police Department, their starting salary is almost what my top out sergeant as a salary was 9 years ago. And so what does that mean? These cops are making more money they've ever made in their entire life. We're turning them into lottery winners, and we're doing nothing to train them on how to handle that kind of money.
You've talked about a little bit about training. You've got some virtual training. If people are contacting you, what are the offerings that you guys can do besides the virtual training?
So we have in-person training. We go all across the country. I've got 4 instructors now, 3 here in Texas, 1 up in Oklahoma, and we spend a lot of time traveling. I just got back yesterday. They're recording the show from El Paso, which was my, I think, 6th conference in 5 weeks in 4 states. So we do a lot of in-person stuff. And then we also have our virtual academy platform as well that covers all the different concepts. Most people, when they think money, they think retirement. That's actually only one of 10 modules we teach. And the most important module we teach is actually not about retirement. It's about budgeting, debt reduction, and those kinds of things.
And you guys offer other services to help people. What kind of services, if somebody contacts you, do you guys do?
Yep. So outside of being really the largest financial wellness training group in the country, we are also one of the largest privately owned by retired first responders, fiduciary only financial firm. That's a very key word. Less than 5 to 10% of the firms in this country are fiduciary only. And what does that mean? It means we don't push products. We don't sell commission stuff. We only do flat fee investment advising that is bound by SEC regulations to do a fiduciary service, which basically just means putting the client's best interest ahead of ours at all times, not just some of the time.
Yeah, I talked to quite a few people, and very smart people, very accomplished, like executives in municipalities. I've gotten to where if I know them well enough, I ask them, like, are you doing something outside of the pension system? And a lot of them are not. Even though there's all these tools out there, there's apps that you can just auto draft and all this stuff. They find it very intimidating. And I know you talked about fiduciary. If somebody's going to select a financial advisor, what are a couple of the things, like tips that they should be looking at?
So one of my 10 modules we teach is one of my favorite. It's called How to Interrogate Financial Advisors, where we teach people the right questions to ask to make the financial advisor squirm or elicit trust. There really are 2 types of financial firms in this country. There are what are called broker dealers, and there are called registered investment advisors. Broker dealers, they're governed by FINRA. We all know the big ones. There's a lot of small ones too. If their name is on the side of a football stadium, they're probably a broker. And they typically facilitate investments for transactions and commissions. So they kind of have a built-in conflict of interest. They're always putting you in things that are good for you, but good for them too. Nothing wrong with that model. I am a bigger fan of the registered investment advisor, which is the flat fee fiduciary only, where they can't sell commission products. Now, the reality is that 90% are dual registered, so you never really know who you're working with. And so that's one of the questions we tell people to ask is, are you a broker, a fiduciary, or both? If they say fiduciary, follow that up. Are you also a broker? If they say, well, yeah, I have that too, get up and leave. You gave them the chance to say both, and they tried to piggyback off of that fiduciary word. I will tell you the number one most important question you should be asking any financial professional: what are your fees? Not some of the fees, all of the fees. And I tell people you should be able to slide a 4x6 postcard across the table and say, Mr. or Mrs. Financial Advisor, I need you to write all the fees that I'm going to pay you. And if you get past the second line, I'm going to get up and leave. If they can't put their fees on 2 lines of a 4x6 postcard, you're never going to understand what you're paying, which means you're never going to fully trust them. If you're working with the financial advisor right now, you should be able to call them up right now and say, hey, I need a report on every fee I've paid you for the last 12 months, and you got till 5. I always joke in the class, and I always say, hey, if you worked overtime in your career, did you ever have that time period where you worked some overtime and you got your check and you're like, that city shorted me by 2 hours? You knew exactly how much you were supposed to get. Well, management fees for financial professionals is our overtime. We know exactly how much you're paying us. And there's nothing wrong with making money. It crosses the line of being wrong when you're not willing to be transparent about what you're making as well. And so those are some of the key things. Are you investing your money the same way as you're investing mine? And if not, why are my investments not good enough for you and your family? Might be difference of age, but there should still be some similarities. So really, really put them through the ringer on this stuff, because that's how you elicit trust. And I'm going to follow my own sword here. You don't go with somebody like FinancialCop because some Joe Blow said go with FinancialCop, right? You got to interview people. You got to pick 2 or 3 companies, interview them, find the right fit. Trust but verify. Don't just go, oh, so-and-so said they're good, because I know a lot of people that said, oh, so-and-so was really good that got burned.
Yeah, it's very confusing. And I think your advice on if they can't tell you in two lines, that's probably really good advice. If it's too complicated to explain to you what you're going to pay somebody, then that's definitely a red flag. Most everybody that listens to this is a government employee. We're, nationwide. Outside of like a company offering like a 457 or something like that, what should people be doing once they've maxed out whatever the company offerings are?
Yeah. So once you've gotten to the point where you've maxed out your, whether it's a 457 or a 401k or what 403b aspect, there are other accounts out there. There are accounts called Roth IRAs. There are traditional IRAs. There are just cash brokerage accounts, which are basically retirement accounts without a retirement code. So you can take money out whenever you want to. And here's the good thing. If you're at that point, if you're maxing out your 457, you're already in a really good position to begin with. So we get to start having fun, and whether that's paying down the house and paying it off completely, which we love to hear about, or just getting in a position where you're living like no one else so you can give like no one else aspect.
It's been nice as, money comes in and being able to actually, put some of that back into community events and nonprofits in the area. I think those things pay dividends.
It is the funnest thing I've ever experienced becoming successful. I always tell people I've had a lot of fun building wealth and doing things for my family and friends, or family and kids, that I never dreamed I could have. I never dreamed the funnest thing would be giving. This last Saturday, we just crossed over $350,000 in nonprofit donations since we started this company. That's the fun. Now, you don't hear a lot about it, because that's the other aspect when you're dealing with companies is if all you see a company doing is posting all this stuff about what they're giving, well, then we don't give for recognition. We give to give.
So in Texas, one of the largest public pension systems is Texas Municipal Retirement System. The law changed and they were able to go from a maximum of 7% employee contribution to 8%. And a lot of people are confused about that. I've heard a lot of people talking about this, and it's funny, even people that are in the system sometimes don't understand how it works. Can we talk a little bit about, it's just 1%, also for those that don't know, there's a matching component to that, and that's self-selected by the city. So the individual contribution can be 5, 6, 7, or now 8%. And then the city matches 1.5 or 2% on whatever the employee contribution is. And the city has to pick that. The employees don't get to pick themselves individually. So it's all in whatever the city picks. For some frontline employees, maybe a $20 extra in contributions on a paycheck. That doesn't sound like a lot, but explain like what that can do over the course of a 20 or 25-year career.
One of the biggest changes to TMRS since they allowed 7%. It is huge, massive. So if a city selects 8%, you don't get 2% match it, you get 16%, right? It's 2-to-1 match on that. So whatever you're contributing, the city has to contribute as well. And it's a huge, huge windfall if a city elects it. The problem with it right now is that the way it was designed, it made it very, very expensive for a city to do, which is why you're not seeing a lot adopted. I know Crandall PD in Texas has already adopted it. Corpus Christi is in the works with doing it as well. And people go, well, it's just 3%. Well, it's actually more than that because of things that are called service credits as well. So it ends up costing the city probably closer to 4%. And we're in a situation right now in today's day and age where property taxes are not going up as much because price of homes are kind of stagnant or going down. And governments can't necessarily increase taxes without going to the public and going to an election, which we know they don't like to raise taxes as well. But the cities that elect it are going to see a huge windfall for their first responders and actually their entire city aspect. And I kind of akin, this is going to be kind of like the way we saw back in the day where predominantly TMRS was 25 years of service and then the 20-year option became available. And yet a lot of cities start to elect it. This is going to be a recruiting thing. You're going to see a few cities do it at first, and then it'll start to pick up steam. And now it'll be like it is now on the 20-year retirement for TMRS. There are only a handful of agencies left that are still at 25 years. Everybody's gone to 20. And you go, well, it's only 1%. What will that do? Over the course of a 20 to 30-year career, it is going to be huge. Right now, what we typically see under a 7% contribution rate matched by the city 2-to-1 is that if you do about 30 years of service, on average, not everybody, you're going to retire out at about 75% of your current income. 25 years of service is about roughly 50%. 20 years of service is roughly about 25% of your income. Well, we won't know the final numbers of what this does until we start to see things start to update over time. But I would not be surprised if you don't see a 30-year officer now being able to retire out at 85% of their income, then 65, and then maybe 35 aspect of it. So that's huge because that's less money you need to make up to replace your income as we start to focus on those 457s and other things, which means that's more money if you're doing the right thing and saving in other retirement accounts that we can dedicate to things like vacations or fun, or again, gifting aspect of that. Talked to a lot of chiefs. I'm talking to a lot of associations across Texas, and I'm telling them, look, we've been very fortunate over the last several years, right? You guys have gotten these just astronomical, stupid raises. This is so big that you as an association, if you're listening, should be going to your city in conjunction with the fire association and saying, we're willing to give up 2% of our raise for the next 2 years if we can get this in place. Because that's how it's going to become more mainstream quicker, is being able to go to the city and go in good faith. We know this is going to cost you a lot of money, but we're going to help you offset that because it's that important to us.
Thanks for mentioning that. And cities are facing some very risky circumstances with the legislature always talking about how we collect and raise taxes and do different things. So, when you're talking to the city managers out there who listen to our program, if we're looking at, competing for the best employees and trying to attract folks, I want to say one thing really, really fast is I completely agree that we don't want to get into a bidding war. Oftentimes in public service, it's about those people who want to serve as their top priority, but also then coming back in and making sure we're compensating them fairly. But, when you're looking at that overall, would you encourage those city managers who are kind of looking at that strategic plan to really try to focus in on, the retirement aspect as opposed to giving those salary adjustments up front and different things like that? But talk a little bit more about that particular group.
Yeah, I think it has to be done in conjunction with education. A couple of chiefs I've talked to about this, potential giving up part of your raise. The first thing that they kind of came back to me was like, okay, that's all fine and dandy, Nick, but let's face it, these younger officers especially, they look at that and they go, I'm not giving up 2% of my raise for this. We inherently, especially the younger you are, we can't see the finish line. We think, oh, retirement's 25 years away, right? Who cares? Buttle to that was from a leadership aspect, you got to bring in not just educators, but you've got to bring in the right education with it. You can bring in people like your defer comp people. Those aren't always the most well-received people, whether it's a group like us or somebody that's well-versed in this. We're fortunate. We're endorsed by the largest police association in Texas. We're endorsed by the largest police association in the entire nation. Bringing in a group like us that the troops go, all right, these people are not admin. They're not tied to the city. And it hits differently when you have somebody like us come in and go, hey, guys, I know you don't want to give up 2% of your money, but I'm telling you right now, give up 2% of your money. So it's got to be a dual hit. Education on this to make these younger folks and the first responders understand that this is actually legit. The city's not trying to screw you. And then going in and actually getting creative with the different proposals to go, all right, this is going to cost us a lot of money. What are ways we can do to offset this?
Yeah, this is the first year in my city or any city that I've ever worked in where they're providing line officers, frontline employees with a total compensation package. I'm fortunate to work in a place that understands that the benefits are very good, and it's not just the retirement. They're talking about 8%, but it's also the health insurance benefits that we get are better than some of the places that are paying more than we are. And that's the hard part is if you're doing it right and providing a good package, it's hard for especially frontline employees hiring those people because you're right, they're looking at that dollar amount on the salary and not understanding that, well, you may make $5,000 more over in another city, but they're not paying your insurance, or they're only paying half your insurance, or they may have family contribution, and you're really netting out less. And it's just really hard to have that education when you're providing those benefits like that.
Well, I want to give a shout out too, because I tell you, obviously I'm partial. I think we're a phenomenal resource, but I'll tell you what, another phenomenal resource out there that's just as good, if not better, TMRS. Those folks that work for TMRS are phenomenal. They've got an entire team that will come out and talk to them. You've got a hotline you can call. I personally know a lot of the people that go across the country with TMRS. That team is phenomenal. And I'll tell you, They have the heart of a teacher, and they want to make sure you know what is legit and what's not, because there's a lot of folks out there that protest to be helping first responders that are more concerned about lining their pocketbooks than they are helping first responders. So don't be scared to even reach out to people like the TMRS folks.
So we talked about the average Americans and all this debt. What could you tell them today, like when they're, we're in budget time, they may be getting raises this year, at least, municipal employees may see some money coming in. So this extra money, they've got their bills set. And now what would be your advice to the average American who's getting a raise today?
The advice would be, first off, you think you have your bill set, but 90% of you don't have your bill set. If you start out your budget discussion with, well, my mortgage is this, my car payment's this, my electricity bill's this, you're not doing a budget. You're estimating what things are. And that's the number one skill of building wealth in this country. Every dollar budgeting. What's coming in, what's going out, tracking it to the penny, because that's how you start to find the waste. That's how you start to find the excess and where you can find other aspects to be able to put your money to use. Now, your greatest wealth building tool is your paycheck you get every 2 weeks. And I'll give you an interesting stat. In the largest study of millionaires ever conducted, over 11,000 millionaires were surveyed. A third of them became millionaires, even though they never earned $100,000 in income once in their entire life. It wasn't about the salary. It's not your salary that makes you rich. It's your spending habits that make you rich. And putting that money to work by doing a full every dollar budget is the first step to everything. Building wealth, adding money to retirement, paying down debt, building an emergency fund. Everything revolves around that monthly budget. And you've got to understand, this is a pet peeve of mine, there is no such thing as a quick fix to money. This is a marathon, not a sprint. I get calls all the time of, well, Nick, what if I do this debt consolidation loan? Yes, I said it purposely that way. Or what if I do a home equity line of credit, or those kinds of things? Personal finance is 80% behavior, 20% action. When it comes to money, if you're struggling with money, you are the problem. Now, that's a good thing, because once you recognize you're the problem, you can start to work on that problem, and you can start to work on what's causing the root of the problem. If you need to lose weight, there's a really simple solution to that, right? Eat less, work out more. If you're struggling with money and you can't pay your bills, spend less, make more. Input in, input out.
Yeah, and I think you're talking about millionaires. There's even books about this, but your average millionaire, you might see them on the street and you have no idea that they're rich. They may be in Walmart clothes and paid off 10-year-old Toyota Corolla, but that's the people that have money.
I mean, one of the most wealthiest persons in the world, Warren Buffett, you know what home he lives in? The same one he bought in like 1958. I mean, the dude, when he was still driving his Cadillac back and forth to work, stopped at McDonald's every morning and paid with exact change, cash, right? If you watch Shark Tank, Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, one of his biggest pieces of advice, you want to become wealthy in America, stop using debt. 79% of Americans never inherit a dime of money. 64% go to a state public school. Top 3 careers for millionaires. Number 1 was engineer. Number 2 was CPA. Third most common career was teacher. Amongst 50% of them were married to cops, because we love our teachers, dispatchers, and nurses.
Yeah, it's really empowering when you can see, if you're doing it right, even from a job like a teacher or a police officer, that you can not only cover your daily basic needs, but you can set yourself up for being able to retire on time or maybe even early. And that's, I think, one of the problems is that we've got these police officers and we're subjecting them to daily traumatic events, and that takes a toll. And if you have to be here 20 years or 25 years versus 30 years or 35 years, it's so much more refreshing to be able to know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, this career is no longer a career. It's a stepping stone, right? When I first got into law enforcement back in 2003, everybody was like, 30 to 35 years. And it turned into 30 years, and it turned into 25 to 30. And now it's like, just get me to 20. And I get people, I'll have a lot of, the poor pitiful me syndrome people. They're like, well, I did 20 years of service and I only get 25% of my paycheck. Well, yeah, you're 45 years old. What did you expect? But that 25% of your income is a phenomenal way to start to give you a stepping stone to the next career, which is another thing you need to start doing the day after you get out of the academy. Start planning your exit strategy. Build your LinkedIn page. When you go to these conferences and get all these business cards, don't throw them in the trash. Come home on Monday and go connect with all those people. Start finding what your life passion is, because when you become a cop, there's all kinds of opportunities. There are very few jobs in this country that allow you to split off while staying in the same career in the amount of paths you can go. Leadership, detective, forensics, I mean, you name it. Start planning your exit strategy day one.
And so we've provided a lot of information to people. What any tips or tricks that we haven't got to, anything that we didn't cover that you think people should know about?
So I start my class with quotes. I end my class with quotes. The first quote I start with is no excuses. It doesn't matter where you've been. It only matters where you're going. Every single one of us has done stupid with money. We can't go back and change, but we all have the ability to change and start to win with money. And the reality is, whether it's money, whether it's fitness, whether it's mental, whether it's whatever you want, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're 100% correct. But you've got to understand that the magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding. If you put the work in, good things always happen.
That's great advice. Michael, before we wrap up, do you have anything for us?
I'm really appreciative of Nick and his, passion for first responders. But as our audience, certainly expands to, executive levels within cities and city managers and things like that. Nick, is that something you guys also work with those folks, or is that, something where you direct them in a different direction?
Yeah, I got into this job to work with cops, and then we expanded it to the first responder side with firefighters and all the other aspects with that. And I never thought we are actually now doing wellness training for entire cities, all the way down to the Parks and Rec folks. And so, yeah, we work with first responders. Obviously, that's in my name, but we also work with a lot of city managers, all the way down to the line level person that's at Parks and Rec.
Yeah, well, and that's such a great thing. What we frequently see in the recruitment world is those folks who start, in Parks and Rec, but or Public Works, or even just your line level police officer or firefighter. They eventually make the best city managers because they went through and they understand what it takes to provide the service to a community. And so, I love being able to see people who have invested not only in their finances, but also in their leadership and just their growth over a career. And then they're able to get to an organization where they can be impactful and really assist that culture. And, it's too limited on the amount of leaders we have in the industry throughout the country. We need to grow more of those folks.
I'll tell you, a good characteristic of leaders is being financially fit. Because think about this. I preach this to my chief. You're making more money than you've ever made in your entire life. And there's not exactly a whole lot of jobs, if you lost your job today, where you could go replace that kind of salary. Imagine being in a situation where you're so financially fit that you're making decisions for what's best, not within the back of your head. And I get some flack from some of my chiefs, but don't tell me that you don't make decisions sometimes in the back of your head going, I know this isn't what the right thing is to do, but I can't afford to lose a $200,000 a year income. It creeps in. When you're financially fit, you go, yeah, no, I'm okay. We're going to do the right thing.
Well, Nick, for the people listening, if they want to learn more about the training offerings that you guys have, whether that's individual or for entire cities, or if they want some of those financial services and want to interview you guys and see if you're the fit for them, how do they get in touch with you guys?
Easiest way is through either our website, which is just financialcop.com, or on any of our social media platforms. You can follow us at FinancialCop as well, anywhere.
That's great. Well, we appreciate you being here. I know just the education aspect of it is great for everybody listening. And I love tying that back to leadership, because I 100% agree. If you know that you can make the right decision and not worry about how you're going to feed your family for the next month, and that's sometimes where we as leaders are, we have to make those tough decisions, and thinking about how we're going to eat in a month, it shouldn't be part of that decision-making process. So thank you, Mike, for being here as well. And we want to thank all the listeners for being here, listening to us. Please like and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform. Don't forget to follow Clear on LinkedIn and provide your feedback to these episodes there. As always, check out clearcareerpro.com for our latest job opportunities, and we will catch you next time.
Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. The views expressed are for informational purposes only and are not designed to advise you on how to handle anything specific to your finances. Neither FinancialCop nor RPA offer tax or legal advice. Interested parties are strongly encouraged to seek advice from a qualified tax and or legal experts regarding the best options for your particular situation. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Advisory services offered through Retirement Plan Advisors, LLC, a federally registered investment advisor. RPA and FinancialCop are not affiliated.